Welcome to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about homesteading stuff and life stuff and everything in between. Join me, Amy Dingman, as we explore big questions on a little farm. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Farmish Kind of Life podcast, where we talk about life and how to live a good one. Today is April 22nd, 2025. This is episode 312. Today I'm going to talk about, we're going to call it Stupid Simple Gardening. And this goes along with a series that I wrote last week on my website. But let me tell you something up front. Even if you have zero interest in growing vegetables, or even if you've been growing vegetables forever and you're a pro at it, the heart of this episode is still going to apply to you. Because whether you're starting a garden or you're starting a business or a creative project or like a full-blown revolution, we live in a world that loves to throw all this information at us, right? They want to throw 800 different steps at you and 17 conflicting opinions and like a whole pile of must-do lists before you even begin. That's the problem with the internet, right? You get so buried in information that you forget, no matter what you're doing, the first step is just to start. You just got to get started. So yes, we're going to talk about gardening today, but more than that, we're really talking about how to begin something without losing your mind in the process. Okay. But before we get to that, what has been happening on the Lifestead? Well, the Lifestead has been so incredibly busy. Gosh, what can I update you on? We did end up having rabbit kits, rabbit babies. One of the does kindled, gave birth. She had 6 little bunnies, 5 survived. They're absolutely adorable, you guys. She had them in the nesting box this time. It was just great. They remind me of little baby hippopotamuses. I don't know why, but every time I look at them, I'm like, you look like little kind of sort of furry hippopotamuses. So it's great. They're doing well. I've got some of my seeds started tomatoes, started peppers. Tomatoes are popping up. Peppers are still trying to figure out what they're doing, but that seems like what happens with peppers every year. What else? We have chicks hatching right now. Like as I'm recording this, I can hear chicks talking to each other in the incubator. So that's very exciting. The asparagus is up. The garlic is coming up. We're in the middle of kind of a big project here. We have moved all of our chickens and our ducks over to our littler barn. And so we need to make an outdoor run for them. I like to have a fenced outdoor run that has a net on top because we have some predator issues here. So we are building a new outdoor run for them over there, but it requires cutting down a bunch of trees and clearing out some brush and doing a bunch of stuff. I don't know why I went to like my southern accent there. What is going on? I'm clearly not from the South. I'm from Minnesota. So anyway, it's been a very big project and I've been kind of sleepy because it's, oh man, I know I say this probably in every podcast episode, but I'm not 20 anymore. But anyway, so we have so much stuff going on right now and I love it. I love being busy. You hit the ground running and you already feel like you're behind. Something else I want to tell you. My newest book, Peace, Love, and Bacon, Tales of a Farmish Kind of Life, is coming out May 6th. May 6th, y'all, is going to be an exciting day. That is the day that the Kindle version is coming out. The paperback version is coming out. So I'm super excited because like it's set in stone now. This is when it's happening, May 6th. May 6th. I think that's a Tuesday. If you want to pre-order the Kindle version of this book, you can do that. I will put the link in the show notes for you. You cannot pre-order the print version. They don't do that, but you can pre-order the Kindle version. And if you're wondering why in the world would I pre-order a book, here's why pre-orders are a thing. Pre-orders tell Amazon, hey, people are kind of into this book. It might be a big deal. And when enough people are into it, then Amazon is more likely to recommend that book to others. So basically when you pre-order, it's like this little sparkly vote that says, this book deserves a spot at the cool kids table. So if you are a Kindle reader, if you would not mind going and pre-ordering that book, then it automatically shows up in your Kindle on the day that it's released on May 6th. It might actually come out a little bit early, y'all, because the time zones in Amazon and my time zone, it's all a little bit different and you can't change it. So I'm just telling you, it might actually come out for you pre-order people on May 5th, later in the evening. But anyway, so yes, all of that to say, if you're a Kindle reader, please go pre-order because it makes Amazon like me. That's all I have to say about that. It will be recorded for audiobook. I cannot do that until it comes out live as an option on Amazon. as a print or a Kindle book. So that is coming, but I can't do anything with that because I'm not allowed to until it actually comes out in other formats. So that's that. What else? Oh, yeah. Hey, Easter was my birthday, and I had all these amazing plans of what I was going to do, right? I'm gonna come home from church. I served Easter breakfast at church, then came home, and I'm like, I got all this stuff to do. We can keep working on the outdoor run that we're building. I can do stuff, to prep the garden. All this stuff I'm gonna do, right? And you guys know what I actually got done? You want to know what I actually did? I ate lunch, and then I was feeling kind of sleepy, and I said, you know what? I think I'm gonna lay down and just take a little nap, just for a little bit, just a little nap. And so I closed my eyes at noon, and the next time I looked at my watch, it was 5 o'clock. You guys, I took a 5-hour nap. Who does that? That was my birthday present to myself. Apparently, there's a lot going on, and I guess my body was like, you know what? You just need to shut down. You need to do a reset. So I guess that means I am well on my way to being well rested for another year of world domination or something. I don't know what we're going to do with all that rest. But anyway, let's head over to the main topic and talk about stupid simple gardening and how we can stop getting buried under all this information and instead just start. So you've decided you want to grow your own food, right? But every time you go online and you go into the little search bar and you type in how to start a garden, you end up buried under 47 tabs of advice that almost make it sound like you're going to need a degree in soil science, and you're going to need like a fully automated greenhouse, and you're going to need a 3-year crop rotation plan before you can even think about sticking a seed in the ground. What we are going to do today is we are going to stop for a second. We're just going to breathe, take a breath, because this thing that we're going to talk about is stupid, simple gardening. Okay, this is going to be for beginners who want to know how to grow actual food without losing their sanity. And again, this is about more than gardening, y'all. So if you already know about gardening, just insert whatever word it needs to be in place of gardening, all right? And there is a ton that you can learn about gardening, right? There's so much. You never stop learning. And you will pick all that stuff up over time. But if you're the kind of person where too much information sends you into this spiral of like decision paralysis, you really don't need another checklist. That's not going to help you. You're going to need the bare minimum to get started without shame, without stress, without crazy expectations. So that's what this is. We are going to grow stuff. We're going to get started in a simple way. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Here's how you're going to actually start a garden. Okay, we're not going to get into complicated raised bed garden setups. We're not going to get into pH testing or double digging or 72 different seed varieties under special grow lights. This is what I'm going to tell you about starting a garden. Okay, we're going to dig a hole. We're going to put a seed in it, and we're going to water it. That's it. That's the podcast episode. Thank you for listening. You get 9 minutes. That's what you get. Okay, so you probably want a little more information than that, right? So what do you actually need, bare bones, in order to get a garden going, okay? You're going to need dirt. Any dirt. It doesn't have to be fancy, okay? This is how we're going to get started, okay? So all that but that you're hearing right now, no. You need dirt. Any dirt. Doesn't need to be fancy. You need seeds. Maybe start with one kind of thing, not 60. You need water. That can be rain. That can be from a hose. That can be your coffee mug full of water. And you need sun. If you have a spot that gets a decent chunk of sunlight every day, you're golden. And honestly, that's all you need to start, okay? Everything else is extra. It's extra, you guys. You don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to do it right. What matters is that you actually do it, because that's how you actually start a garden. I wish I still had pictures of our first gardens. We had this like postage stamp sized yard in our Main Street house, and we're growing stuff kind of on the edge of it. And Had I been blogging back in those days, I'm sure someone would have informed me that we could not, in fact, grow the things we were growing in the setup we had, and we were doing it all wrong. And yet we did it, right? And you can do that too. You can plant stuff in the ground. You can plant stuff in the corner of your yard. You can plant stuff in a 5-gallon bucket. Maybe that cracked tote that you found in the garage. Maybe an old wagon you were going to throw out. You can plant literally anywhere that has dirt and sun. Okay? I have dug holes in the middle of my yard and dropped strawberry plants in. One year I put tomato plants in these old 4-gallon pots that we had from getting apple trees. I have planted cucumbers in big 5-gallon buckets. Like, I've been known to stick some green thing in a random container. I'm like, where did this container come from? And I use it, and it's done just fine. They've all produced food. And I mean, stop me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the point of why we start a garden, right? And I know you're wondering compost and bugs and soil tests and all of that. Save those questions for later. You do not need to know it all to begin. Honestly, seriously, you will learn best by doing, and you will figure it out as you go. And you know what? That's how most of us started. We didn't have this grand plan. We had a shovel, and we had some hope, and we had some seeds. And in the grand scheme of things, having access to all these millions of bits of information and advice about how to grow anything and everything, that's a relatively new concept, actually. Like, your great-grandparents did not have that. And in some ways, I think too much how-to kind of complicates the entire thing. Because when we sell the idea that there's a certain way to do something, it's almost like we make people believe they have to get it exactly right before they even begin. Like, they have to have this plan and they have to know exactly what they're doing and how it's going to turn out. And you know what? That's a really great way to make sure that folks never start a garden at all. And the truth is, I mean, this is what I think, but you're probably going to learn more from sticking your hands in the dirt than you're ever going to get from watching another YouTube video. And I say that as someone who makes YouTube videos. Mistakes are part of the process. Imperfect gardens will still grow food, and sometimes the best way to figure it out is just to try. All right, so a question that people often ask is, what am I supposed to grow? Like, what do I plant? Okay, I'm going to save you from the 2-hour internet spiral of trying to figure this out. You don't need a chart. You don't need a downloadable planner. I mean, unless you want one, but you don't need it. What you need to do is ask yourself one question, okay? What do I actually want to eat? That's the magic formula, okay? Planting your garden, especially if you're just starting out, is not about what looks trendy, what looks cute on Instagram, unless you're into impressing people with these like Pinterest perfect produce things that you're never going to cook because you don't know how. Your garden should be full of stuff that you are actually excited to harvest and put on your plate. So what you need to start with is this. What do you actually like to eat? What would make you super, super excited to walk outside and see in your garden and be able to pick it? Because that right there is your answer to what you should plant in the garden. Now, I know you were wondering, what do I do about gardening zones? How does that relate to what I'm planting in my garden? And yeah, gardening zones exist, and you might want to know what gardening zone you're in. You can look that up online. It is sometimes helpful to know what's going to grow where and when, okay? But also, gardening zones are not gospel. You will hear advice like, you can't grow that in zone 4, or that crop is never going to work in your climate. And you know what? Sometimes that advice is right, but sometimes it's total hogwash. Because gardening zones do not factor in things like microclimates, or that one sunny pocket behind your garage, or that corner of your yard that is always 10 degrees warmer or 10 degrees colder in the spring, or that one year where it got really warm really fast or never seemed to warm up at all. Gardening zones don't factor in things like magic. You know, I have relatives growing Rainier cherry trees in Minnesota. You guys, those trees are not supposed to grow in zone 4. They are not supposed to thrive in zone 4. And you know what? They are, and they have for years. So gardening zones are not gospel. Here's something I always think about when people are talking about when to plant their garden. Okay, so sometimes on the podcast I will talk about my great uncle. His name was Claremont. He lived through the Great Depression. He passed away early 2010s, I think. But I learned so much from him. He was such a character. And he was the kind of guy who would keep seeds in his pockets, like just in his shirt pocket. And he would toss them around the garden whenever just to see what would happen. We'd be out like walking his farm and he'd reach into his pocket and he'd pull some seeds out and he'd just toss them out. And I'd be like, what are you doing? And I asked him once, why are you planting so early? And it was like the second week of April. And here our last frost date is like mid-May. Okay. And he's like second week of April, he's tossing seeds out. And the forecast that year was still hinting at snow, which is not uncommon in Minnesota. Right. And so I'm like, why are you planting so early? And he just looked at me and he said, who says it's too early? Who says? And then he tossed another seed at the ground and he said, you know what? If there's a late freeze, I'll plant again. But if I don't have to replant, then I'm ahead. And I remember he just looked at me like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you getting so jacked up about this? And I have carried that advice and that sass with me ever since. Because it's not like they take away your birthday if you plant too early. If you plant too early and you get a late frost, you have to replant. That's all. They're not taking away your birthday. So I've always thought about that and how Claremont said that. So what should you plant? Okay. Kind of already covered this, but here's like your stupid simple list of what you should put in your garden. Something you love to eat, something that grows in your general climate, something that makes you feel excited or makes you feel curious, like, I wonder what would happen with that. Something you won't cry over if it doesn't work out. I mean, if you've always wanted to try tomatoes, do it. If you are curious about carrots, throw some in. If you love to eat green beans, go for it. Okay? But don't plant kale if you know you don't like kale, right? There's no reason for having that kind of negativity in your garden. So you figured out what to plant in your garden. Where are you supposed to get your seeds? Because that's a whole nother thing, right? There's like 10,000 internet influencers telling you their favorite heirloom seed company, and every single one of them is the best for, very different reasons, right? And you know what? A lot of them are awesome. I've got my favorites too. You can find the links for these in the show notes. I like Seed Treasures. That is right out of Minnesota. I like Seed Savers Exchange, and I like Baker Creek Seeds. But you know what? You don't need to have the perfect seed source to grow food. You really don't. Some of my best gardens have started with seeds that I have picked up from the grocery store end cap. Other years, I have ordered from all the fancy places. I've started all my seeds. I've done it all right. And I still ended up rebuilding my garden from whatever seedlings the local hardware store had left, because there was like this surprise torrential downpour and it flattened everything in my garden right after I transplanted. You have to grow what you can with what you can find. And yes, it's fun to support great seed companies, but you are not failing if this year's garden gets patched together with leftover seedlings and discount seeds from the clearance rack. Food is food. Growth is growth. Start where you are. Now, how much space do you need for your garden? How much space do you need to grow food? Because I think when people think about how much space they need for a garden, they picture these gorgeous raised beds or these gardens with huge long rows, maybe that's surrounded by a cute picket fence and like an archway of cucumbers or peas or whatever, and it's all perfectly labeled and weeded and photographed at golden hour. And then they look at their own yard or their balcony or their weird patch of gravel by the garage and they're like, yeah, I can't do that. Never mind. But here's the truth. You don't need the perfect setup. You don't need a huge backyard. You don't even need a yard at all. All you really need is somewhere to stick a seed. That might be a reused pot on your front step. When people picture a real garden, they've got this vision. Let's interrupt that vision, because it's awesome if you have a lot of space, because plants sometimes need space, right? But there are like these spacing guides that exist, a certain amount of space between each plant and between each row and all that. But sometimes you're just thrilled to have a place to stick something, and you might not get the recommended however many inches between rows. Sometimes it's more like, squeeze in, buttercup, we're all going to grow here. We got to get cozy, plant pals. Sometimes that's what you do. So don't let a lack of having the perfect space stop you from planting something. You probably have more options than you think. And I mentioned some of these earlier, but you might have a cracked tote in your garage. Maybe you've got a wooden crate. Maybe you've got a 5-gallon bucket. Maybe you have the ground, like just the ground. It doesn't have to be fancy. You could use an old dresser drawer. You could use a raised bed made from a leftover pallet, leftover pallet wood. Maybe you have a forgotten planter box on your porch. Maybe you have a sunny windowsill you could put some herbs in. Maybe you have a fence where you could grow some stuff vertically. You could have some vertical planters there on the fence. Maybe you have a shady corner, which would work really good for spinach. Maybe you have a wheelbarrow that has some holes in it. Now you can grow lettuce in it. Maybe you have a flower bed that you've planted, and maybe you can sneak some pepper plants in there. And don't forget about like shared space or forgotten space, like the strip of grass between your sidewalk and the road, or maybe the edge of your driveway, or maybe you have a patch of sun next to your mailbox. If you've got dirt somewhere, you've got space. We have to start thinking about growing where we can and using what we have. And sometimes that means looking differently at a space that's always been there. Maybe a space you can use differently. We finally put blueberries around our well pit. We were really tired of dealing with this long grass that was always growing up, and it was just like the way it was landscaped. It was just like it was a mess, right? And one day we looked at it, we're like, you know what? We could do something with that. We could put some blueberry bushes around there. So that's what we did. Took us years to finally get it done, but we did it. How much sunlight do you need in your garden? Sun is a thing, and it definitely helps. A lot of garden plants would like 6 hours of sun or more. But if you've only got 4, you can still try it. Try some leafy greens. If you've got full sun in the morning and that spot is shaded in the afternoon, totally workable. You can do it. If you've got a south-facing porch, awesome. You've got a north-facing deck, everybody's going to say you can't grow anything there. Try it anyway. Why not? Stop waiting for perfect. Use what you've got. You can start small with your garden space. This isn't a contest. You don't have to grow 47 varieties of tomatoes your first year. You don't even have to grow 47 different vegetables your first year or ever. You can start with 1 bucket or a 4x4 bed or those 3 cracked containers you found in your shed, because it is better to grow one thing well than 15 different things that all stress you out. You're going to learn more, you're going to enjoy it more, and you're going to avoid that overwhelm that hits when the cucumbers go feral and the zucchini will not stop reproducing. Like, it's okay to start with one thing. The amount of space that you actually need is as much space or as little space as you're willing to tend. You don't need a big garden. You need a small, manageable garden that works for you. And that's going to be different for every single person. So why is this starting a garden so stressful? Okay. I think lots of folks think about starting a garden, but I think one of the biggest reasons people don't is because they're afraid they're going to screw it up. And I think this is the part that really gets into, this applies to a garden, but it applies to a lot of different things in life. Lots of folks think about starting XYZ, but one of the biggest reasons they don't is because they're afraid they're going to screw it up. And it's not like in this world today, we're going to screw it up quietly, because we have social media. Everybody's posting their pictures, posting their comments, posting their opinions. So mess ups happen publicly, where someone's going to see it, where some smug know-it-all in the internet is going to pop in and say, well, you know what? You should have hardened off your seedlings better, or whatever. Most people are not afraid of gardening. They're afraid of failing at it, especially where someone else might notice. And I get it. The anxiety makes sense. But stop for a second. What's the worst that's going to happen if you screw up, if you mess up? Someone's going to laugh. A neighbor's going to make a comment. Some stranger on the internet is going to clutch their pearls because you planted your tomatoes wrong, according to them. And here's another thing. Part of the problem is that we get so excited about gardening and we want to go all in from day one. And we start researching and we go down a rabbit hole, and suddenly, lettuce from the store is suddenly unacceptable. We can't eat that. It's terrible, right? And so we put all our faith and our trust and our hope in some seeds we're going to sprinkle on the ground. And what's more is that now the survival of that lettuce or that cucumber or that tomato or that pea is not just about being able to eat something that we grew. It's about what it represents about our awesomeness as a person and the projects that we take on. And you know what? That's a lot of pressure on you and a tiny packet of seeds. And being afraid to mess up your garden just means that you care. I totally get that. But unless you are banking your family's entire survival on this garden, and my guess is if you're listening to this podcast episode, you're probably not. I think we can calm down a bit, right? I think we can take it down a notch. This is not the apocalypse. If for some reason your garden ends up to be a complete and utter failure, you are absolutely still going to have food. Either from a friend whose garden survived, or the farmer's market, or the grocery store. You are not going to starve if your cucumbers flop. You are not going to die if the beans don't work out. You are allowed to try this and mess it up. And brace yourself, you probably will. During your gardening adventures, you're going to forget to water something. You're going to water it too much. You're going to plant things way too close together, or you're going to plant it next to something that totally chokes it out. Or the tray of quote-unquote cucumber seedlings you picked up, they're going to turn out to be some kind of aggressive squashzilla thing. Or you're going to wake up one morning to discover something got eaten, or something wilted, or something exploded, or something just decided to give up, right? And you're going to be standing there with your cup of coffee like, what the heck? I thought this was supposed to be peaceful. And here's the good news. That's not failure. That's gardening. That's what it is. And it's the most alive kind of learning you're ever going to do. And it doesn't mean you're not good at it. It means you're doing it. Everybody screws up their garden. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has issues. I remember the year that I started all my seeds at the same time indoors because I was like, I'm going to start my seeds. I knew nothing about starting seeds, really. I took all the seeds that I planned to put in my garden and I started them all indoors. Most of them didn't need to be started indoors. And I ended up with a jungle in my house way before stuff could be planted outside. It was awesome and ridiculous. I remember the year I forgot to label my tomato seedlings, and I ended up with this patch of tomatoes, and all the varieties remained a mystery until they ripened. I had no idea. I was like, yeah, I know that's a tomato. I don't know what kind it is because I forgot to label the seedlings. One year I let my tomato plants just fall over because I didn't stake them until it was way too late. I was like, that's fine. I'll stake them later. No, you won't. And now my tomatoes are all over the ground. I remember when I used to grow lettuce in the garden instead of our hydroponic system in the basement, it bolted. It got really warm. It bolted. And it was terrible. It was the most bitter lettuce tree that I'd ever grown. I remember I was on this kick once. You know, you look through the seed catalog, you're like, oh, this would be cool to grow. I have no idea what it is. It looks cool. It seems cool. Or people are talking about it online. And so you plant a bunch of it and it grows. And then you have no idea how to cook it. You're like, what am I supposed to do with this? And then it all rots before you even get to it. There have been many years I've forgot to pick the little zucchini. And if you've grown zucchini, you know what happens. Like 4 hours later, it's the size of a baseball bat. It always happens every year, right? And my list that I could share of mistakes and things I've messed up could go on forever, right? You could be listening to this 6 hours from now. But the point is, despite my screw-ups, I still garden every single year. Because mistakes are not the end. They're just part of the rhythm. It's what you do, right? You might be afraid to make a mess of your garden, but honestly, that's how most of us started. And it's what most of us are still doing, if we're honest. If you don't believe me, ask anyone who gardens and is willing to be honest. And they will tell you all about the time something flopped or bolted or just vanished. They have no idea what happened. Even seasoned gardeners still lose plants every year. The difference is they know it's not personal. It's just part of the deal. It's just what happens. And the other thing is that sometimes it's not you. Sometimes the mess up is not you. Sometimes it's Ma Nature. You can do everything, quote unquote, right and still end up with super weird results. You can do everything that worked last year and it will totally flop this year because the weather does what it wants. Rabbits do what they want. So do aphids and chickens and dogs and kids and well-meaning significant others. So don't be afraid to mess up your garden. Let it be imperfect. Let it be an experiment. Let it teach you, because that approach is so much less stressful. Am I saying that right? I don't know. Like, it's less stressful to approach it that way because you're going to learn about gardening by doing it. And you know what? After you plant a garden, if you finally plant that garden, whether it thrives or it flops, you are officially a gardener. You're not just someone thinking about it. You're not just someone planning to do it. You're someone who's actually doing it. And that is what matters. So I think you all should go mess up your garden. Okay, so you planted the seeds. The garden's ready to do its thing, whether you did it in the ground or containers, random pots you found, whatever. But now what? Before you fall down this deep rabbit hole of charts and rules and expert advice, I'm going to tell you some garden care basics that are not complicated, because you don't need to know everything right now. What you need to do is pay attention and show up and learn as you go, okay? So here's what I'm going to tell you need to do. Number 1, water it, but don't drown it. Water your plants, but don't drown them, okay? If it hasn't rained for a while and you stick your finger in the soil and it's dry, like, okay, let's say you have a pan of brownies and you got that dry brownie edge, right? You probably should water, okay? If it's just rained and your plants are still squishy, they don't need another drink. Really, they don't. They're fine, okay? The thing to remember is that not all plants like the same amount of water, and not all plants need the same amount of water. Watering is not about this like strict one-size-fits-all schedule. It's about paying attention to your plants. You will get the hang of it. Just pay attention. Bonus tip, if you're planting in containers, they will dry out faster than if you're planting in the ground. It's science. The next thing I'm going to tell you to do is walk through your garden once a day, like you mean it. Look at the leaves. See if anything looks like it's been munched on or wilted or it's sad or it's super happy. Smell your garden, touch your garden, check under the leaves. Get familiar with what is normal for your garden. Are there holes in the leaves? Are weeds taking over? Did something disappear entirely? Are there bugs hanging out? You don't have to like hover over your plants like you're some kind of helicopter homesteader, but do a quick walkthrough every day if you can, because you're going to learn a lot just by noticing what's going on, right? The next thing I'm going to tell you is do not be afraid to yank something out and move on. This means a couple different things. If all your seeds came up and you're like a rock star gardener, so you put your seeds in and they all came up, but now everything is packed in like you're in some kind of vegetable mosh pit, you need to thin them out, and it's perfectly okay. And I know it feels mean, okay? I've been doing this for a long time, and I still say sorry under my breath every time I pull out a seedling to make room for other ones to grow. But giving your plants space will help them grow. You are not betraying them. This is a strategy. Something else I mean by don't be afraid to yank it out and move on is if something is clearly struggling and it's not going to bounce back, pull it out. Compost it, feed it to your chickens, feed it to your pigs, plant something else in its place. You did not fail. It is not a failure. You just learned what doesn't work this time. And that's fine. Sometimes the smartest, boldest gardening move that you can make is shrugging your shoulders and saying, well, let's try something different. And that's totally okay. Here's something else I'm going to tell you. Pick the stuff already, okay? When something looks ready to harvest it. Do not wait for Instagram perfect, because lettuce is going to go bitter. Zucchini is going to become a baseball bat. Cucumbers are going to get weirdly fat and yellow if you wait too long. Bigger is not always better, my friends. It is okay if it's not exactly right. It still counts. You're still going to be able to eat it, okay? Here's a bonus tip. A lot of veggie plants will keep producing the more you pick them. So for instance, some folks will let green beans hang on the plant because they're afraid to use them all. They're like, oh, I have all these beans, but if I pick them all, they're all going to be gone. But get this, if you pick the beans, the plant makes more beans for you. If you stop picking, the plant thinks you're sick of the beans and it slows down on producing. So honestly, go ahead and pick them, okay? Something else that's very important is to take care of the garden, but take care of the gardener too. Make sure you water yourself. Stay hydrated, wear a hat, protect yourself from the sun. Don't be out there crouching in the full sun at 2 p.m. for an hour unless you want to feel like a baked squash. It's not lazy to work early in the morning or the evening. It's actually really smart. We love being in the garden, but working outside on this new thing that you love can have you forgetting how much time you've actually been out there. Okay? So be mindful of the sun. Be mindful of your hydration. I also feel the need to tell you, you maybe even want to stretch before you go out there, because I'm not 20 anymore, and I will absolutely admit to last year I tweaked my back because I stood up wrong after bending down to pick a tomato. So, take that as you will. The next thing I'm going to tell you is use your instincts. Trust what you're observing. Trust what the plants are telling you. You're going to learn more from one season in the dirt than from 400 hours on YouTube, because every time you show up for the plants you're taking care of, you are learning. Now, isn't there more to learn about garden care basics? Yeah, there is a lot more. I'm learning every single year that I put more plants in, okay? But that's not for you to learn right now. The basics of garden care is the starting line, not the final exam. You do not need to learn right now about companion planting or crop rotation or double digging or pest ID or soil pH before you even go out and water your beans. If you want to learn that stuff, that's great. But if you are the kind of person who shuts down from too much information, I am giving you permission to not go there yet. Okay? It is just like driving a car. Okay? Nobody expects a new driver to understand how to merge onto the freeway and change a tire and drive a stick shift and know international road signs on day one. You learn to make the car go down the road first. The rest comes later. Right? It's like with cooking. You don't have to be a gourmet chef to make dinner. You start cooking by not burning the grilled cheese, right? Nobody hands you a fancy souffle recipe on your first day in the kitchen. And that's what gardening is. Getting started with a garden isn't about knowing everything right at this moment and doing it all perfectly right now. It's about doing it with whatever space you have and whatever time you can spare, and with as much joy and curiosity as you can squeeze into the process. So go plant your garden, because that's awesome. You're going to plant something, you're going to keep it alive, you're going to feed yourself with something you grew, and that's incredible. Do not let anyone tell you that it doesn't count because it wasn't done in a certain way. You're going to water it, you're going to watch it, you're going to harvest it, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to repeat. And if something dies, you're going to try again next year. So there you have it. Your permission slip to stop overthinking and just plant the dang thing. Whether it's tomatoes or a new project or a total life pivot, it does not have to be perfect to be worth doing. You're going to start with what you've got. You're going to learn as you go. And if something flops, congratulations, you're actually doing it. Okay? Thank you so much for hanging out with me today at the Farmish Kind of Life podcast. If you are a Kindle connoisseur, reader, ebook reader, whatever, and you want to get a hold of Peace, Love, and Bacon, please go to the show notes and find the link for that pre-order. I would greatly appreciate it. It helps me with what's going on Amazon. Until next time, remember, the dirt does not care if your raised bed is ugly. It just wants to grow stuff. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I will talk to you again soon. Hope you enjoyed the show today. To continue the conversation, visit our website at afarmishkindoflife.com, find A Farmish Kind of Life on social media, or drop me an email at amy@afarmishkindoflife.com. Peace, love, and bacon, y'all. Stay farmish.